And the West Coast Heat Check is back for the first time. I'm wearing this crazy hat. To be quite honest, I feel a little uncomfortable with it, but I'm going to wear it for just a segment. I want people to know who are the defending NBA champions. We're back for another edition of the West Coast Heat Check, where we talk all things NBA, specifically in the West Coast. The Deits is wearing Arizona State and hockey, both the 2-1. That is a very interesting selection, Robert. And we're also joined by Stephen Hughes, who's rocking his Julius Irving, his Dr. J afro down there in the bottom. And I am the host, Nick Rice. We have a bunch of very interesting topics to discuss in today's show. We also have the New York Knicks face-off, where we tell you who are the 5 greatest Knicks in the history of the franchise, and the loser gets muted and totally cut out. So that'll be interesting, along with hot and cold players. We'll also discuss the All-Star game, thoughts about its new format. That much more is coming up. But we begin at Atlanta, where the Hawks have a head coaching change. Just 2 days ago, Lloyd Pierce, who has won just over 37% of his games, 63 wins, 120 losses throughout his run in Atlanta. He is now gone. Robert is actually the one spearheading this conversation for us throughout the week. And now we're back for another edition of the West Coast Heat Check. Robert, what have been your inklings and your thoughts about this situation?
My thoughts about this, and I'm so happy to be back on the show. I know it's been a week, but it's good
Oh,
to be
that's right. Happy
back.
birthday. Shoot, I didn't bring that up.
Thank you. And with the Arizona State hockey shirt really quick, I actually, when I visited Stephen Hughes and a couple other friends out there, my buddy got me this Arizona State hockey long sleeve. I had to rep it today. I was just feeling it. I love it. But to
Works
go
up.
into real business here, but the Atlanta Hawks, they've been struggling this season. They're not in playoff contention, losing record. Trey Young has expressed his thoughts on the former head coach, and it's been frustrating because I think the Hawks are such a great team. They brought in all these free agents. They brought in a man called Clint Capella, Gallinari, and Trey Young's their star, and they're trying to get this guy to get to the playoffs. And we've had this all-time Hawks discussion. Me and Steven did. Steven was wondering why he's not on the all-time 5 just yet. Well, I don't think he has the team to help him make it there to an all-time 5. Yeah, he could be the MVP of this team, but if you don't have the right head coach, it's just not going to go well. And Nate McMillan is going to be the interim head coach, and he only accepted the position after conferring with Lloyd Pierce after his firing this Monday. I think the Hawks have such a good chance, maybe not this season, but next year, making the playoffs with the talent they have. I think they're just trying, and with Jamie Collins as well, they have that young and they have veterans. I think they just need that right head coach to get them in the right direction.
The one thing I wanted to disagree with Robert on is the fact that he doesn't have the pieces around him, and when it comes to Trey Young. I mean, signing Bogdan Bogdanovic, bringing in Danilo Gallinari, Rajon Rondo, Chris Dunn, and then having Claude Capella come in, early in the middle of last season, and then also having John Collins on your team. I feel like that's a pretty talented team. A couple of factors haven't been going in the Hawks' direction, though. Obviously, the injuries. Chris Dunn hasn't played all season long. Bogdan Bogdanovic has missed 25 games, and Gallinari has missed 9. So that's obviously something that you can't really control, whether you're the star player in Trey Young or the coach in Lloyd Pierce. But there are other aspects in which there have been games that Bogdanovich has been available for. There have been games that Gallinari has been part of. But the Hawks seem like a stalled team, very similar to last year. They're going to be reliant on the shootout games. Okay, we got to score more points than our opponent. That's pretty much their mentality. Trey Young doesn't play any defense. John Collins, he does all right. But the thing is, this isn't a big man's league anymore. This is all about the 3-point shot. And with the Hawks, with Clint Capella and John Collins, I'd be surprised moving into next year if both of those guys are still in Atlanta. I think John Collins would probably be the most likely guy out to leave. There've been rumors that he could be possibly on the trading block as the March trade deadline comes closer and closer. I think it's like late March, like the 23rd. So keep an eye on John Collins as the name. But for Lloyd Pierce, like I said, When you're reliant on the shootout games, it's usually not going to work in your favor. Look how the Kings have been doing this year, and there's been no real progression in this Hawks team from last year to this. And for that reason, he had to go.
Uh, First of all, Stephen, wonderful points. You're just piggybacking off of what has been a great run of the face-off. We'll see if that run continues later on in today's West Coast Heat Check. I agree with you in the sense that Atlanta has so much more potential, but how do you feel, Stephen, you first, about a mid-season coaching change versus waiting till the end of the year?
It's not ideal. I mean, you want to get everything kind of in order with a new head coach with that off season. I mean, it's precious time, and especially now in this weird year with COVID, it's not going to really make things any easier. But with and that's just with just like one of the coaching changes that happened like in Minnesota, for example, when they brought in a guy outside of the team. With bringing in Nate McMillan, he's been the assistant coach for quite a while for Atlanta. He kept on the entire coaching staff that was on hand for Lloyd Pierce for this entire season. And McMillan's got a ton of experience himself coaching teams like the Blazers, the Supersonics, and the Pacers, I believe. So he's got a winning track record. That's not the issue. It's just I think that for the Hawks front office, I think they wanted to change something now rather than later, because I think they do notice that the playoff window for them is closing this season, and I think they want to get ramped up for next year. Because I agree, there's a ton of potential for this team. I mentioned the talent that they have already. It's just a matter of everything needs to be timed right. The injuries have to be kept low. The consistency on both sides of the court needs to be on point, and then they could be a playoff caliber team. But this year, I think the Hawks just wanted to get kind of ahead of the game for next season.
To piggyback off Steven here, remember the Hawks still have a contention to make that tournament of the 7, 8, 9, 10. And hopefully they do have a chance with McMillan. No, I mean, I'm just saying they have a chance to make the playoffs here. They do have a solid chance. They're only 16 and 20. I mean, the even 500 team is the New York Knicks, and they're sitting at number 5 right now. So with this mid-season head coaching change, I can see where Steven's saying this is really frustrating. And it's going to be really tough for this team to really get back in contention with a coach that's going to have to step in and possibly maybe get this team possibly to an 8th seed at this point. I mean, the Eastern Conference has been very unpredictable lately. So if McMillan can maybe lead this team possibly to an 8th seed, I could see it happen. I mean, Steven's saying there's weapons around them. Well, let's see if McMillan can make it happen then. Let's see if he can use those weapons to his advantage. One of them is Hunter, DeAndre Hunter as well. He's also been a guy that's been stepping up with John Collins on top of it. I mean, Clint Capella's been playing a great year too for the Atlanta Hawks. I think Rajon Rondo has been one of the guys that has been having one of the best seasons field goal percentage wise, and he hasn't been getting the most minutes lately, but I feel like Rondo, we saw a whole different Rondo with the Lakers, and I feel like we're seeing a whole different Rondo with the Atlanta Hawks. So I'm seeing some veteran guys being a little different, but I think McMillan could lead this Hawks team to an A seed spot.
Yeah, I think the excuses are running thin for Trae Young. If the next coach after McMillan, if indeed McMillan doesn't stick around, if they can't win, it's a matter of time before Trae Young's the guy people point at as saying he wasn't as good as we thought. Houston wasn't as good as I thought. This is amazing. 13-game losing streak. They just dropped one tonight. This is our broadcast on a Wednesday. We're giving it to you on a Thursday morning. This is really bad, and it's getting even worse, Robert, that Victor Oladipo declined his 2-year max offer. What are your thoughts of that?
I mean, it was a 2-year, $45.2 million deal, Nick, and maybe he just doesn't see the Rockets possibly being that playoff team. Maybe he does see them as a rebuilding, and they see DeMarcus Cousins just walk out the door like nothing. And then Victor Oladipo could be the next guy that just has to have that happen. I mean, John Wall and Christian Wood have been playing great. Oladipo played tonight. I think Oladipo maybe wants to find a home that's going to settle him, and maybe he's going to be that star. I mean, for Indiana, he was that star when he was in Orlando. He was that star in OKC. He was learning a lot from Russell Westbrook. And I don't think he's considered that star there. And I think John Wall now has taken over the spot for the Houston Rockets alongside Christian Wood. I think Oladipo, he declined a lot of money. Declined a lot of money for a man that's been injured and hasn't proven himself being fully healthy ever since being with Orlando and being with OKC. I I think he should have taken it, but I could see the reasons why he didn't. I think maybe for a team that's trying to maybe get out of that rebuild mode, I could see him being that guy.
To piggyback on Robert, I mean, DeMarcus Cousins has been irrelevant in this NBA for the last few years. I mean, ever since he tore his Achilles, I mean, he hasn't been relevant. So I mean, if I was the GM for the Houston Rockets, I mean, he's just kind of empty space, to be honest, on the bench. So just I'm happy to let you go. For Victor Oladipo, I think that he's in a Houston is in a complete blow up rebuild mode right now. And I think I kind of saw that after Russell Westbrook got traded to the Washington Wizards. I mean, that was the marquee trade. And I was like, okay, Russell Westbrook is gone. Now what's James Harden going to do now? I mean, it's him and a bunch of average to below average guys. And there's a clear reason why he just threw in the towel to start the season with the Rockets. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to play for this team. This team is going absolutely nowhere. Like if we couldn't make it to the finals with the solid team we had a few years back under Mike D'Antoni with Chris Paul and all that, and they were they're at Game 7 Western Conference Finals against the Warriors. If we can't, break out of the ceiling and make it to the finals, then it's over. And I think James Harden made the right decision. The Rockets are in complete rebuild mode. It's great that they have Christian Wood. He's a talented guy that they can hold on to and make it so like they have potential. But Victor Oladipo, he's a veteran, and Robert attested to it. He's suffered a lot of injuries. What if the next injury for him is career-ending? What if that really limits him to being, just a bench guy? I mean, yeah, you could say like, okay, getting the money now is the best decision, but I think that he might be more in the realm of, hey, I want to get a ring before my career ends, and I think that outweighs the money that the Rockets are going to tie him into and stay into a team that looks to be a bottom of the Western Conference team, definitely this year, maybe into next year and in 2023.
Yeah, they definitely towards the bottom. Robert.
Sorry, so I want to pick off Steven there really quick. With all Depot stats this season, I just kind of want to point out the stat line for him.
You go for it, man.
He's played in 14 games this season for the Rockets, started all 14. He's actually averaged 19 points a game this season, 1.4 steals, 4.7 assists. His free throw percentage is 0.75, so average. But man, the 3-point percentage has been below 300 right now. It's 0.297 right now for Victor Oladipo. So maybe I think he just needs to get maybe a little bit better with the 3-point ball this season, but Oladipo is still not a bad player. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say I think he's not going to ever be that star player for a team ever again, but he's going to be that Robin to a Batman type of player.
No, and I think a good example for Oladipo. I'm not comparing him and this other player in terms of size, but more in terms of contribution to a Chris Middleton. I think he'd be a great number 2 guy if he stays healthy, and that's the big question. But I mean, Robert, you mentioned he scores like 19 points a game this season in 14 games with Houston. That's kind of where we've been seeing Oladipo. Like he's a career 17 and a half points per game type of guy. I mean, in his best years with Indiana, he averaged about 20 and a half. So this is kind of the best that we're getting out of Victor Oladipo. And for me, I don't blame him for wanting to leave Houston. I think it's the best decision for him to go to a contender. I mean, just to give something off the top of my head, I think Miami could be a good shout. Duncan Robinson has not lived up to the expectations he built up last season, and that team is a playoff caliber team. They made it to the finals last year. So I think that's just one team off the top of my head, but Oladipo should be looking for someplace else. So he deserves a lot better than a bottom of the conference team in the Houston Rockets.
Houston has lost 13 games. And even though we're not even halfway through the year, they still aren't even the worst team in the NBA, according to the NBA standings. Let's take a look at the complete standings from what we have seen this year. And it really is, as Steven mentioned, not a whole lot of change in the standings. My fancy PowerPoint will bring you first the East as I try and change where exactly our cameras are. Let's move that over here. Philadelphia is in first, but I have the team highlighted there at number 5, which is so surprising. Robert, what's your thoughts of that number 5 team in the Eastern Conference? And this, by the way, are the standings that don't include the 10 p.m. Eastern games on Wednesday, just the 7 p.m. So there's subject to be some movement between now and when we air this tomorrow morning.
Okay, so Steven, I feel like you can agree with me. It bothers me when a Golden State Warriors team is 8th seed and they have a winning record, right? And then we go to an Eastern Conference where we see a even 500 team be at the 5th seed. Steven, I'm talking 5th, not 8th. We're talking 5th seed here. New York Knicks. I mean, shout out to Julius Randle, what he's been doing, man. I mean, he's really improved. Like, he's putting up better stats than Anthony Davis. And I've mentioned that before, and I will keep mentioning it, Nick Rice. I know you're a Lakers fan. I will keep mentioning he is putting up better numbers
That's
than a
amazing.
struggling Anthony Davis.
That's great.
And he's leading a New York Knicks to a 5th seed right now. Crazy to say that out loud. I will say shout out to Miami Heat. I mean, I know I'm going to mention them earlier, but man, 17 and 18, they were not even in playoff contention for a while, and now Jimmy Butler lit a fire of the Miami Heat, as you know, it is the Miami Heat. So he really got that team going. I love to see Toronto is back in contention as well. You love to see a hot LaMelo Ball. He's almost averaging like about over 24, 25 points per game in his last 5 with the Charlotte Hornets, and they're losing, and starters have not been playing. Like Gordon Hayward has been a star that's been out for a while, and LaMelo Ball has really stepped up. Indiana, I mean, I could see them coming back up, and I see the Hawks, but Chicago, I feel like has a good run as well. But I'm gonna say this right now on the show, and I told Nick earlier this week, Washington Wizards are a playoff team. You heard it first. Washington Wizards are a playoff team.
Pretty sure they were even closer to the playoffs last week, or 2 weeks ago, but whatever.
I mean, they were at the bottom. I mean, you saw Detroit and Washington as the laughing stock. Now we're seeing Washington as 13 and 20. I mean, you got to give them credit where credit's due. I see the Wizards becoming a playoff team.
We can hear your mic's working.
All right, I know. I just got to make sure the fans know. I'm making that prediction right now on the show.
Hey, we can hear you for sure. All right, Steven, go ahead.
So that's the Deits guarantee. My guarantee already went by the wayside with the Suns, but I'll get to that when we cover the Western Conference. But I'll touch on the Knicks for a sec. It's a great story. It's nice to see the Knicks that they're above 500 for a sec. Now they're at 500 again, but still, it's nice to see that the Phil Jackson era seems to have ended. There's been a nice transition so far to this rebuild, and the Knicks have been doing a great job. In the Miami Heat, they'll definitely be in contention. I mean, they got hit with the COVID bug very early on in the season with Jimmy Butler, Iguodala, Bam, and all the. So it was always tough. I knew Miami was going to rebound, but the rest of those teams I don't care about. So it's always about the top 4 in the Eastern Conference because those are the teams that are really in contention for a spot in the finals. So for me, my updated top 4. Number 4, I'm going with Miami. Boston is not a top 4 team. They're not. They're just way too inconsistent. I see them as more like a 5 or 6 seed. I can see them winning a series based with the talent and the depth that they have, but they're just way too inconsistent this year. And that's what worries me the most. So they're on my top 4. At number 3, I'm staying with the Sixers right there. At number 2, I'm going with the Bucks. And they're usually been my number 1 team, but it looks like there is a new superior in the Eastern Conference. That's the Brooklyn Nets. They're humming. They are humming. The Brooklyn Nets. I mean, even with no Kevin Durant, I mean, James Harden, I've never seen James Harden this productive on multiple levels with point. Obviously, he's always been productive with points, but with rebounds, with assists, all the triple doubles he's been getting. I mean, these are real triple doubles. I'm not talking about the stat padding that Russell Westbrook brings to us over the last few
It's all
years.
right.
I'm talking about real productive triple doubles that have been helping the team. And it's just been terrific to see what James Harden has become with the Nets. He's way better off than he would be in Houston, and that's the reason why they're my number one team right now in the Eastern Conference. And at the moment, they're definitely the team that will be coming out of the Eastern Conference. And I think a lot of people, almost everybody, would agree with me.
To
Wait,
me, I don't think it. This is just my opinion. It's very hard to evaluate a regular season triple double, but I think if you have a triple double in the playoffs, no matter what round it is, those are the triple doubles that are valuable. Just my opinion, because it's very hard to judge. All right, Westbrook had like an insane amount during that MVP season, but how important were they or were not they? It's hard to say. Western Conference. Here's a look at the team that's going to miss the playoffs. Number 2, Phoenix. When we look at the rest of the Western Conference, Stephen, I'll start with you before I pester you anymore. What are your thoughts of what's going on out west?
I mean, we touched on it the last couple of weeks with the Lakers. We this is kind of I mean, they're going to go through a bit of a cold spell with AD being out. Their weaknesses are being exploited, and our guest Eric Dennis, he touched on it perfectly. I mean, LeBron, there were a couple of years in Cleveland where he was the 2 seed or even the 4 seed, and they still made the finals. So. For the Lakers, I know they're going through a cold spell, and it's tough to watch them right now lose games. Talking about you, Nick, but it's again, it's really nothing to worry about. It's just a matter of if they're in the top 4, that's all they really need. Because when it comes to playoffs, when it comes playoff time, LeBron is going to be in playoff mode, and that's a dangerous player to be in front of. My top 4 in the Western Conference is very similar to what we see. I got the Clippers at 4. The Suns are at 3. I think when AD comes back, the Lakers will boost up that record a little bit and get to number 2. I think the Jazz will stay at number 1, but it would probably be Jazz and Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, and the Lakers will win that.
Wow.
But
Don't
with
sleep on Phoenix, by the way.
yeah. But and then talk about the other teams, like the 7 through 10 conversation. That seems about right. I mean, I don't think New Orleans is a playoff caliber team.
You don't think
Oklahoma
Zion
City,
could do a playoff push late?
I think New Orleans could be like a year away. I think there are a couple guys they can get rid of, and replace them for more productive guys, maybe off the bench. I think Lonzo Ball needs to go. I just really don't think he honestly he's getting close to like DeMarcus Cousins status where like he's just becoming an empty space. Like what real value is Lonzo Ball bringing to the New Orleans Pelicans? And it's not much. It's not much or nothing at all, in my opinion. The Kings, Rockets, Timberwolves, we won't go into them. Honestly, like from the 7th seed can kind of get mixed around with the Spurs, the Blazers, and the Nuggets, but all 4 of those teams can definitely stay in that 7 through 10 little play-in tournament. So, I mean, the Mavericks, they're kind of on the rebound a little bit, but they struggle with inconsistency with their defense. The Grizzlies are too reliant on John Morant, and the Warriors, if they had Klay Thompson, they'd probably be in the top 4 right now.
so to piggyback off, I love what the Utah Jazz are doing. I think the Jazz have played amazing basketball, and they deserve that number 1 seed. I could see them holding that spot all season long. I think the Jazz hold on to the number 1 no matter what at this point.
They got a huge.
That number 2, 3, and 4 seed are very competitive right now, and I feel
By
like
the way, not to cut you off, the Lakers are losing to the Sacramento Kings, so they most likely will be 4 by the time this broadcast is out tomorrow.
more like Nick Rice has always been the bottom 4, you know what I mean? So to go off of that, I feel like when AD comes back, I think if I had to give my update for on the West, like Steven gave his update for on the East, I think I'm going to leave the Lakers at number 3. Clippers are at number 2. And man, those Suns are hot, man. Like they're heating up right now. CB3, you got Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton's been looking really good. A lot of people thought he maybe wasn't going to be the guy. Well, DeAndre Ayton is becoming the guy for the Phoenix Suns, and I'm really happy to see DeAndre Ayton's like growth. And the next thing DeAndre Ayton's really going to have to do, and that makes the Suns even better, is just work more on the 3-point game. But besides that, he's doing everything else right. If he can maybe shoot a little bit more 3-pointers here and there, that makes the Suns a little bit just more dangerous than what they are already. Shout out to San Antonio. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm gonna rave about him. I know Andrew Nepson, our guest that was on a couple weeks ago, is a big fan of the Spurs, but Spurs are doing something right, and I love to see how DeMar DeRozan and DeJounte Murray are doing well. Let LaMarcus Aldridge go and see what you can do with that. I think Denver could be a lot better and be more on top. Golden State, man, you got to give a shout out. They're holding down the AC pretty well, and I think they're going to keep it that way. Dallas is improving a lot. I could see Luka's really trying to lead that team. Even I think Kristaps Porzingis is starting to improve a lot more, even with all the rumors spreading around him saying that he's going to get traded or he's going to leave. I think that fueled him a little bit to maybe help Dallas get up there and maybe become more of a playoff contender type of team. Besides that, the bottom tier, I really don't see that 11 through 15 making any type of threat whatsoever in the Western Conference. But I do have a question for Steven going back to Eastern Conference really quickly. You talk about how the Miami Heat are going to be that number 4 for you, but that Boston Celtics team, I get it. They're in that even 500 team. It's now Miami is coming back up to that type of contention. Do you think Boston at least is a number 5 or a number 6 seed team? And do you see the New York Knicks possibly going down to that 7-8 seed?
Yeah, I think the Knicks will probably be the 7th seed. I think they have enough quality around their team to win that first playing game that will solidify their playoff spot. The Celtics would most likely be the 5 seed, I would say. Nick, if you can pull up the standings again. No, you're good. I just wanted to double check when I say this with the.
Oh, there we go. All right.
Yeah, I was going to mention the Pacers, but and I mean, look how the difference between the number 4 and the number 11. There's only 3 games of difference. I mean, by the time we do a show next week, this could all be scrambled up. But I mean, the teams that are really like solidified within the top 5 would definitely be the Celtics, the Heat, and then the other top 3 teams. I mean, with the Knicks, it's tough to say because I really do think that Charlotte could get there as a 7th seed with how well they're playing this season as well. So with Toronto, I mean, they have their really good nights and then they have their really bad nights where they get blown up at Detroit like they did today. So it's hard to get a gauge on Toronto. I think they'll make it into the play-in tournament, but probably as a 9 or 10 seed. So it's tough. That 5 through 10 is going to be really tough to tell right now. But that's a great question, Robert.
All right. Well, we're going to have to move on to the All-Star game because we're running a little short on time here. So these are the contestants for the 3-point contest and the skills challenge. As we wrap up this segment of our show, I'd like to ask you folks who you believe wins each of these contests. For this season, the 3-point contest in the parentheses features their 3-point percentage this year. And it's pretty clear about who is the runaway leader in the clubhouse for the 3-point contest. Deits, who do you think wins this weekend for the 3-point contest?
So I noticed that Steph Curry's not on there. I know he is actually going to be in the contest for the first time since 2019.
That's weird because the NBA.com didn't put that up, but I know he will play. So that's weird why they didn't have that.
I don't know why either, but I think if I had to pick really quickly, my pick is going to go to Buddy Hield. We're going to go Buddy Hield. We're just going to go wild. We're going to pick a random one out of the blue, but I'm going to go Buddy Hield. We're just going to pick Buddy Hield and see how it goes.
I'm going to go Joe Harris back to back. He's kind of been like the automatic 3-point shooter from the corner for Brooklyn. And I mean, he was kind of like the surprise for us last year. it's no surprise this year, in my opinion. I think he'll want to defend that. And the 3-point contest is actually coveted a little bit more, in my opinion, than the dunk contest, because you actually need, a solid amount of consistent talent for the 3-point contest. And I think that's what draws so many people to watch it. So Joe Harris wins it for me.
I'm going to go Duncan Robinson. I was really impressed with how he ran through the finals last year. And I think now that he has no cover in front of him, teams aren't teeing off on his 3-point shot. He can really flourish. 39% shooter from distance this year. Skills challenge. There's a look at the lineup right there. I don't remember exactly all of what they do. There's a lot of dribbling and passing and shooting involved. My personal opinion, as far as skills go among that list, I'd be shocked if Jason Tatum didn't win it. First with Deits, who do you think wins the skills challenge?
Man, Nick, why do you gotta read my mind like that? I feel like I gotta go Jason Tatum on this one. I love the Celtics. I love what he's been doing this season. He's really been the MVP. He really can do everything. So I'm gonna give a shout out to Jason Tatum. I think he's gonna win the skills challenge.
Yeah, Jason Tatum won it in 2019. Actually, I was out of town in Reno, and Reno, Vegas, pardon me. And I threw some money on him to win it, and he hit a bank shot and beat Trae Young that year, and I was fired up. So I'm gonna go with Jason Tatum again, just riding the good times.
I could really see Steven in Vegas just celebrating hard. I could just see him going like, I'm spending my money tonight.
Right. Unfortunately, I did not also put in the dunk contest participants. We were scrambling to make this thing happen tonight. So Anthony Simmons of Portland, Cassius Stanley of the Pacers, and Obi Toppin of the Knicks are the 3 participants. Simmons is the one I remember the most. I'm going to go with him. There's absolutely no basis behind my opinion on that.
And understandable as it is, but I got to go with Stanley from the Pacers. I think it's going to be a one-man show. I think he's really going to make this dunk contest very fun. Sad to see no Zach LaVine and no Aaron Gordon. Shout out to Aaron Gordon from Archbishop Bendy, but I'm going to go with Stanley on that one from the Pacers. I think he's going to run with it.
I'm gonna go with Obi Toppin. I mean, he's got a highlight reel that lasts like more than like 5 minutes. So with all the dunks that he had at Dayton, he's extremely athletic. I think he could definitely pull the rabbit out of the hat here and win it. So I'm gonna go with Obi Toppin from he plays for the Bulls, I believe. The Bulls, yeah. I know he's from Dayton, or the Knicks. He plays for the Knicks. Yeah.
All good.
I knew that.
You know what? I had to. Anyways,
no, I don't know why I said Bulls, but the New York Knicks.
All right. Well, speaking of that, Knicks face-off is coming up next. Stephen Hughes is 3-2 all-time against Deits. We'll see if Robert can even the score. That's coming up next. This is the West Coast Heat Check with the host, the Big Skinny, and the Deits. Back in a moment. Episode 7 of West Coast Heat Check continues. The Big Skinny, the Deits, and the host. All right, it's our favorite time of the episode, the face-off. Dun, dun, dun. Where we break down the top 5 players of every team in the NBA. Today's episode features the New York Knicks. And I feel like based off of our NBA standings conversation, now's the perfect time to bring up the New York Knicks. It's almost as if we are wondering if Julius Randle will maybe one day be on this type of countdown. Probably not today. All right, so Stephen Hughes is 3-2, the leader in the clubhouse, gets the first pick. So go ahead and let me know who are the greatest 5 players in Knicks history.
All right, let's start at number 5, Carmelo Anthony. Talk about a guy. I mean, he had many great success in Denver, but I think his legacy is going to be based with the Knicks. Led the league in points per game one time in his career, and that was with the New York Knicks. That was back in that 2012-2013 season where he averaged 28.7 points per game. Over the course of his career, 24.5 points per game, shot 44% from the field. I mean, you're talking about, he's up there as one. He's definitely a top 50 player in NBA history. In terms of Knicks history, he's number 4 in my always popular and favorite PER, player efficiency rating, in team history. He's number 2 in he's number 7 in points. I mean, the Team success obviously wasn't there. It definitely was more front-ended with Mari Stoudemire, with those good teams that they had. But near the end, it was a kind of a messy ending with him and where to go with Kristaps Porzingis and Phil Jackson. It was just a whole thing. But I think Carmelo Anthony, based on the individual success and the accomplishments he made in New York, he is at number 5. At number 4, I'm going to go with Dave DeBusschere. Maybe I don't think a lot of people have heard of him. He started in the league in 1962 with the Detroit team over there. He played 6 seasons with the New York Knicks, but made the most of it. He averaged 16 points per game, 10.5 rebounds per game. He's a Hall of Famer. When they did this vote quite a while back, I think he was in there as like a top 100 player in the 20th century. 8-time All-Star. He's a 2-time NBA champion, both of them coming from the Knicks. The bulk of his success came from the New York Knicks. He's also a 6-time All-Defensive player. Just a solid big man. That's all it really is for David DeBusschere. He's number 7 in PER. At number 3, I'm going to go with Walt Frazier. I mean, it's expected for the Knicks with their illustrious history. All these guys should be Hall of Famers. For Walt Frazier, he spent 10 seasons with the Knicks, just a little bit under 20 points per game. Again, 2-time NBA champion, 7-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA. He was an All-Rookie. He was an All-Star Game MVP. I mean, it was him and Willis Reed that really rode that wave in the early 70s with all that Knicks success. Along with Phil Jackson. It's funny. It comes full circle with Phil Jackson helping out that 70s, that 72 and 73 Knicks team won the title, and then it's a disaster when he becomes the president of basketball operations. But Walt Frazier was a stud, another top 50 guy in the 20th century. Willis Reed is number 2. He spent his entire career with the New York Knicks starting in 1964, averaged 18.5 points per game. He averaged 13 rebounds per game. I mean, this guy had a ton of stats. He spent his entire career at the Knicks. He's an MVP in the 69-70 season. He was a Rookie of the Year. He was a 2-time Finals MVP, 7-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA. I mean, this guy just really had almost all the accolades you could accomplish as an individual and as a team player. Guy just out of Grambling State University, and he's obviously he's definitely up there as I would say top 15, top 20 most accomplished players in NBA history. I'm not saying the best, but most accomplished with all the accolades he picked up throughout his career. And number 1, Patrick Ewing. I mean, what else can you say about Patrick Ewing? The Big Pat. I mean, 11-time All-Star. He was obviously in Space Jam. I mean, that's as a classic movie. He averaged 22 points per game with the team, 10 rebounds. He's number 1 in points in team history. He is number 6 in PER. He is Mr. New York Knick, in my opinion, with what he has brought to the team. And they almost won the title with him, but unfortunately they lost to the Spurs. But I think that definitely between Walt Frazier and Willis Reed, that was definitely a toss-up. But Willis Reed was obviously my number 2. Patrick Ewing, it was undisputed number 1 New York Knick in my opinion.
Interesting. There are a lot of similarities, Deits.
There are a lot of similarities. Okay, so I guess I won't reveal my number 4 then first, but Steven hit the point with number 5, Carmelo Anthony. I would say in the last 40 years, him and Ewing were the best 2 Knicks as of right now, and Carmelo Anthony has still been one of the best Knicks. I would hope Julius Randle would maybe fill in those shoes, but it's really hard to even fill those shoes when the New York Knicks did get Carmelo Anthony. I mean, all you can think about when Carmelo Anthony made it to the Knicks was Carmelo Anthony. He was the guy. He was the guy who made the shots. He was an all-star his entire time there. I just feel like they didn't surround enough pieces around him to be successful. Being him out of the league for a while, I felt bad because he was such a good, solid player. And then once he left New York, a lot of people just thought, oh, it's Carmelo Anthony is just going to be a selfish type of guy. Well, now he's with Portland. Look what he's doing now.
Yeah.
So I love Carmelo Anthony as a New York Knick and always will. Walt Frazier, I mean, you got to go one of the best, is the best point guard in New York Knicks history, hands down. And Stephen really touched up with Walt Frazier being the number 3. And it was hard because I believe that Walt Frazier and Willis Reed, that 1970s Knicks was definitely some of the best Knicks that we have ever seen. They won the 1970 and 1973, and 1970 was the Willis Reed year. He won MVP. He won the All-Star Game MVP. He was just the leading scorer in everything during that 1970s, and I loved Willis Reed for that reason. And I thought he would maybe be number 1, but it was a toss-up between him and Patrick Ewing. But Patrick Ewing, I mean, come on, man, he leads in basically most of the all-time stats for the New York Knicks. I mean, you talk about games, minutes played, field goals attempts, 2-point field goals. I mean, I can go on and on. Steals, he was one of them. Blocks. I mean, he got dunked on the most almost out of any player because he was not afraid to go up there and just get slammed on. Nick, I mean, the man just looked like he was. I mean, he wasn't afraid, but that's what you love about a player because he's not afraid to go up there and feel embarrassed. But I will say one interesting thing about Walt Frazier before we do move on. He has the most triple doubles for New York Knicks history with 23. My favorite number, February 23rd being my birthday. But this is where I disagree with my fellow co-host over here, Mr. Stephen Hughes. We've had a long history together, but it's got to be one of the best backcourts in NBA history back in those times in the 1970s. He came over after the 1970 championship to help the New York Knicks win a 1973 championship. They call him the Pearl. They call him the Magic Man, the Black Magic, the Lord's Prayer. We call him Earl Monroe for number 4.
Go nicknames. All right.
I had to go out with the nicknames, but the man did make a huge difference during that time. He played under Hall of Fame coach Red Holtzman. He actually played with Phil Jackson, fun fact, and he won a championship way back in the day. During the finals, he averaged 16 points a game and 4.2 assists, and I will say the Monroe-Frazier pairing is one of the best backcourts, and he is a Hall of Famer in there as well, and he is part of the NBA 50th anniversary team. So he's also a 4-time All-Star, and he retired in 1980 due to knee injuries. But I think Earl Monroe was a big piece of winning that 1973 New York Knicks championship, and that's why I'm going to go with number 4. He came after the 1970 championship, and him and Walt Frazier were very well known for that backcourt. It's kind of like you can almost say like possibly the Steph Curry, Klay Thompson type of deal. You know what I'm saying?
Interesting. All right. So it pretty much across the board, 1, 2, 3, and 5, you guys picked the same. What I thought is interesting is that Deboucher.
Oh.
Okay. So he was selected 4 in your list, Stephen, and then Earl Monroe and Deits list. I'm going to ask a question that's going to be a little bit different than I'm sure you guys are anticipating, even though it will talk about that difference. I'm not going to try and debate whether Earl Monroe Deboucher belongs in there, because I'm fascinated because both of them are Hall of Famers, why one of you or both of you chose one of them below Carmelo Anthony, one above, and then it was flip-flop for the other one. So I'm interested why I'm supposed to believe that Melo isn't worse than both the Hall of Famers, even though I think Melo would eventually be a Hall of Famer, or maybe he should be better. What were your guys' logic on that? And I'll start with Deits.
I think Earl Monroe. It's
Because
hard.
Melo
Nick.
didn't have the playoff success.
I know, and he just didn't have the playoff success as much as Earl Monroe did. And I do talk about saying him and Frazier were a very great pairing together, and they made one of the best backcourts back in the We're talking about 1970s here, Nick. I'm not saying this was the best 3-point scorers ever, but I'm talking about Earl Monroe made it such a big difference going in as a when he was in a Knicks uniform. Yes, he didn't average the great numbers as Carmelo Anthony did, but he was a two-time All-Star when he was a New York Knick, and he did make a huge difference by winning that one championship alone. In his best two seasons were actually the 1974, 1975, and 1976 season, and he actually went out of the season, the 1979-1980 season, in his last season, was a New York Knick, and ever since he got traded and got moved, he remained a New York Knick.
Steven, right before you go, my personal opinion is I would have Melo below both of those guys who were excellent defenders, Hall of Famers, and NBA champions. Why do you believe that it shouldn't be in the way that I'm thinking?
And it's pretty much the same point as Robert. No playoff success. I mean, I think with the Knicks, the majority of their success has come late 60s, early 70s into the 80s and the 90s with the Patrick Ewing era. I think when you talk to New York Knicks fans, I think they like to recognize those guys a little more than Carmelo Anthony. I mean, Carmelo Anthony was great in terms of stardom, in terms of like the production he had on the individual level, but there was really no team success. So that's why I don't have Carmelo Anthony. That's why I have Carmelo Anthony at my number 5, because of the individual success. But with these other Hall of Famers, I mean, like I would say like a Bernard King or Earl Monroe, they just weren't around as often. And I say this once, I'll say it again. I go consistency over a long duration. And I mean, Melo, Frazier, Reed, and Ewing did it. And DeBusschere did it as well over 6 years. And he ranks high in many categories, top 5, top 10 in franchise history, with rebounds, with defensive win shares, with just all across the board. With the production that he brought to the team, in my opinion, over Earl Monroe, which is Robert and I's difference.
Interesting. Did you have a rebuttal to that?
As I said, just one of the best backcourts in New York history. I mean, he did help win a championship and got the New York Knicks to the top of the mountain. And in that, but within 3 years of that happening, I mean, he wasn't a part of that New York Knicks team because he got traded over the season after. And I think he just made a huge impact in the game and really helped out Walt Frazier and made his life a lot easier. And with Willis Reed alone, I mean, you could talk about that big three in itself. I mean, maybe we could talk about the early 1970s big three with Willis Reed, Earl Monroe, and Walt Frazier.
I mean, you talk about Earl Monroe, you talk about Willis Reed, you talk about Walt Frazier. I mean, DeBusschere was with those teams. Like, he's considered one of the best defenders of all time at his power forward, small forward, like kind of like a hybrid forward position. And I mean, I think for me, like Earl Monroe, he was part of the greatest backcourts in NBA history, Knicks history for sure, but even in NBA history. But in terms of what DeBusschere offered, was more than just kind of like that guy that's going to get points. I mean, yeah, he averaged 16 points per game in 9 seasons with the Knicks. That's pretty solid. I mean, essentially, DeBusschere did the same thing, but he was also he's way more effective on the defensive side of the ball than Earl Monroe was. I mean, with the rebounds, with the blocks, and the assists. Not the assists, pardon me. The blocks, the rebounds, and the steals. So I thought DeBusschere was more all around, just slightly more of an impact for the Knicks team, outside of Frazier and Reed, than Earl Monroe.
Man, is there any way I can do a tie? I mean, like, seriously, this is just like both of you guys making great points.
I will say Steven does have, like, I think his all-time, it's just like opinionated, right? I mean, we talk about us, like we picked Hall of Famers at the end of the day in this top 5. So, I mean, you really just can't go wrong. It's just what you like, Mr. The host.
Yeah. Am I allowed to pick a tie? No, I got to pick a winner.
No, you got to pick one. You got to pick one, whether you like it or not.
All right, fine.
And I know the big skinny agrees with me. You got to pick one.
I agree.
All right. Well, if I had to choose, my life was on it, and I was held at gunpoint. Unfortunately for you, Deits, I think Hughes had a slightly better point about. Oh no, a slightly better point about just the success defensively of a Deboucher and how that was the difference maker in those titles. But it was so hard because both of them are Hall of Famers, Earl Monroe and Deboucher. Both of them were really successful. Both of them were champions. So both of them played on the same team. That's the tricky part.
Well, I mean, the difference between putting like I didn't put Earl Monroe in because I thought, I mean, I was kind of making my point with Walt Frazier. I think, yeah, like you obviously need to mention Earl Monroe when you're talking about Walt Frazier, but to put him right above him at number four just seems a little just like, hey, like you're kind of proving your point a little too much. I think the Boucher, just like I said, both sides of the ball, both sides of the court, just a complete and just perfect player for really any team. And unfortunately, nowadays, you don't really get that often. It's kind of like, all right, you're a defensive guy or you're an offensive guy. You kind of have your roles. The Boucher offered both, and that was a key catalyst for those titles that the Knicks won in 69-70 and then 72-73. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I, I, I love to be you, Miss the host, man. Like, it's tough making these decisions. It seems like every week we bring our A game, but I'll take this dub, with a smile, and just looking forward to next week, like always.
I mute the person who loses, but it's weird. Every time somebody loses on the show, they don't talk back. You're not yelling at the camera there, Robert. So I just find that interesting. All right. Well, that was the Knicks face off. You don't have to have an opinion, and you don't have to have a top five I agree with, just an intriguing top five, an intriguing debate, and why it was so close both ways and why one win and one loss doesn't quite feel right, because it wasn't like Deits had horrible points or even decent points. I thought he had really solid points. It was just I had to choose, I guess. And both of you guys your lists were just 1A, 1B. I've been asking Deits to unmute for a minute now. He's done. He's done. You know what? I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that.
I'm back. I'm back. I'm back for the hot and cold and the hot and cold players, but that's all I'm talking about.
That's all you're talking about. All right, let's go ahead and move on to that. Hot and cold.
I might as well just put in Linsanity. Just might as well, just might as well just put that in there and just said, you know what? He had a great couple games, and then maybe that would have put the difference in there. But I'm ready to talk.
All right. Well, we certainly hope that you're feeling okay. Hot players. I have one that's off the board. Totally off the board. We haven't talked about this guy all year. Malcolm Brogdon, Indiana. Have we talked about him? I don't think so.
No.
Okay. 21, 6, and 5 are his averages, but he's scoring about 30 a game over the last week or two. I went totally off the board because most of what we do is on the board. Who's playing great for the Lakers or the Nets or the Philadelphia 76ers. Speaking of that, my other hot player is James Harden. Another triple-double in his trip back to Houston. 29 points, 13 assists, 10 rebounds. That's pretty good. So James Harden, I think that he's going to finish the regular season on the hot list probably another half dozen times. This is how good he is.
Yeah, I agree with you. And James Harden's on my hot list as well. Past 4 games, they've played Orlando, Dallas, San Antonio, and Houston. Not the greatest of teams, but 24.5 points per game, 24.5 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game, almost 10 assists a game. Talk about those triple doubles. I mean, like I said, I feel like they're more productive triple doubles than Russell Westbrook's. If there's some people out there that are like, hey, I don't agree with that. I think Russell Westbrook's better than James Harden, then you're full of baloney. Anyways, so let's go.
Sipping his tea in the corner.
Yeah, Westbrook is sipping his tea with like an MVP, but nothing to show for as a team player. Please. Anyway, and then my second, I'd beef with Russell Westbrook. And then my second hot player is Domantas Sabonis, a fellow Pacer to Malcolm Brogdon. They've been playing some good teams like Boston and Philadelphia and the New York Knicks. He's averaging 21, 13, and 5 over over the last 4 games. I mean, he's really done a great job. Like I said, the Pacers, they're going to be in that conversation for the play-in tournament. Do I see them actually making the playoffs? I'm not sure. I think it's a little too early to tell with how volatile that 5 through 11 seed can be in the Eastern Conference. But it's great to see Sabonis productive as ever, really showing out over the past week. And then my hot team is going to be the New York Knicks, just for the fact that they're above 500. So shout out to the Knicks. Or they were above 500, but they're 18 and 18 now. So
who knows? By the time this broadcast is over, my hot team's the Knicks too.
So my hot player, and I talked about San Antonio Spurs, I'm going to go DeJounte Murray. He actually led in steals in the month of February, which I am really impressed. His stats have just grown. And from last season to this season, I think him and DeMar DeRozan have really been that dynamic duo. No offense to LaMarcus Aldridge, but you have not been the guy that I think a lot of people thought you're going to be coming over from Portland. And I think DeJounte Murray is finally showing his colors. He's improved in the last 4 seasons. Averaging 15.8 points a game, 7.1 rebounds, 5.3 assists, and his PER, which the big skinny really loves to mention, is above 15. It's at a 17.49, so above average.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope the big skinny is impressed with that number. I don't know if he is or not, but free throw percentage has been over 80% this season. 3-point percentage has been a little bit lower, but this man is making improvements. He started every game so far this season, 31 for 31. I love his game. I love what DeJounte Murray's been doing. He's been dishing the ball out. He's been getting the boards. He doesn't have to be the main scorer, though, and that's what I like about DeJounte Murray. Now, come on, man. We're really not going to talk about Bradley Beal here. We're not going to talk about the man that in the last 10 games has been putting up 33 points a game. Over 6 rebounds and 5 assists a game. I mean, come on, man. His field goal percentage is over 50%. We're not going to mention that part. Bradley Beal has been on fire. My goodness. He leads the league in scoring. And his player efficiency rating, which, the big skinny, I'm still going to keep mentioning this because I know you love talking about it, is a 24.89, which is top 10 in the NBA right now. Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook are becoming the duo I wanted them to become. And I love how the Wizards are just becoming that better team now. The Big Skinny also did mention this team as being his top 4 team, and I think I'm going to agree with him. I think it's we got this team to finally become what they're supposed to become. With the Miami Heat, as much as my hot team, points allowed, they are top 5 and less than 110 points a game. And assists per game, they're 11th in the league with 25.8. Bam Adebayo has been their leading scorer and field goal percentage leader if you count all the games he has played in as well. But Jimmy Butler has come in and he's becoming that leader once again. I want to see Hero and Duncan Robinson improve in the second half of the season. I think they have so much potential to come back and be hot players for the Miami Heat. And I think Andre Iguodala is getting a little bit older, but I know Andre Iguodala is going to really probably come up big time in the playoffs if Miami does make it, which I believe they will, and they will be a 4th, 5th seed, which the big skinny did say earlier.
As far as cold teams, I think we all can agree almost every week Houston qualifies. I'm going to take the cheap route and go the Rockets, even though the cold player that I have is Karl Anthony Towns of Minnesota. I mean, for the most part, he's been healthy. So Minnesota being 7-28 this year is a total embarrassment. I mean, there's almost no excuse why a guy of that caliber can be healthy and this team be that bad. And my other cold player is PJ Tucker. Over the last 6 games that he's played, that's the other key. He's been missing a lot of these games. He's gone scoreless in 3 of them. So he's just running around 25 minutes a night, just running around, getting his exercise. PJ Tucker, come on, man. Let's get some scoring going. You're not the top scoring option, of course, for Houston, even though there's not much scoring involved with that team. But come on, man. So PJ Tucker, Karl Anthony Towns. Karl Anthony Towns is scoring points, but it isn't meaning anything.
Yeah, my cold team is going to be the Orlando Magic. They have lost 5 in a row. They always somehow, some way, and I know that the Markelle Fultz injury was pretty big to the team. But why does it seem like every year that the Magic start out pretty hot, like relatively hot? They'll start the year in first like 10 games. They'll finish like 500 or above 500, like 64, 5-5. Like maybe the Magic are a playoff caliber team, and then they just crash hard. I mean, they're losing to the Pistons. They've lost to the Hawks. I mean, this is a team that, I mean, if they don't turn it around soon, they have no chance of getting into the play-in tournament. At this moment, I don't see them making the play-in tournament, and losers of 5 in a row. That's a cold team for sure. My cold players, we'll go with Will Barton. And kind of a theme for my cold players is not just cold players over the last week or two. I go with cold players for the entire season. For Will Barton, we're seeing a big decrease in rebounds, in points per game, in steals, in 3-point percentage, in field goal percentage. I mean, all of them are just really, really low, down to the numbers of like a couple of years ago, and then back in 2014, 2015. So it's just, and 2 years ago, I mean, he didn't play a full season. I believe he was injured for the most part. So we're seeing some poor numbers from a guy who started 28 out of 32 games so far this season for the Denver Nuggets. And then Darius Bazley from the Oklahoma City Thunder. He was a guy that he's a second-year guy. He was expected to kind of make that jump. He had a decent year last year, coming off the bench for the most part, and 18 and a half minutes, averaged like 6 points per game. He was shooting about 35% from downtown. It's like, okay, let's see you make that jump. He hasn't. He really hasn't. He's down in the bottom. He's in the top, not to say the bottom 10 for worst PERs in the NBA. He's averaging 12 points per game. He started all 34 games so far this season. Lows in field goal percentage, lows in 3-point percentage. He's only averaging 12 points per game. I mean, we haven't seen that jump at all from Darius Bazley, and it's a shame. I mean, he was the first-round pick from the Utah Jazz, but he got traded over. I think that was part of the wasn't that part? It was part of some trade, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But I mean, he sure hasn't done a lot of help for a Thunder team who are currently out of the play-in tournament.
All the first-round picks they gave to OKC.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah.
All right.
All right, I'm going. All right. Well, I guess I'm gonna be rolling here as
Oh,
the
yeah.
host didn't want to introduce me this time. It's maybe because I lost the face-off earlier, but it's okay. So I'm gonna go for a team that is in playoff contention right now. I know this is something that I don't want to throw out a team that's an easy team to put as a cold team. You know what I'm saying? I gotta put out something different for the fans
That's
to
a
know.
shock.
And I may have just given it away a little bit, but they lost 4 of their last 5. Yes, they've lost 2 close games, and they've also, yeah, they've lost 3 close games out of it, and they got blown out by a big margin by the Phoenix Suns. But I gotta go with the Portland Trail Blazers. They have lost 4 out of 5. They just beat Charlotte. They're in a game right now, and it's actually close. It's 101-98 to the Golden State Warriors. Currently, they are third. They are last in the league in assists per game and points allowed. They are top 5 worst team in the league right now with 115.1. So Portland's got to get back on track. I don't know if they're going to win this game right now. I feel like it's just a close one, but they were actually on a really big hot streak, and they were my hot team. They would have probably been my hot team last week because they were on a 6-game winning streak right before they lost 4 out of 5, and they're going to keep becoming a playoff team and remain in that 6th seed. They got to keep winning games, so they got to get back their mojo. That's going to be my cold team with the Portland Trail Blazers. Even without CJ McCollum, Damian Lillard's been carrying the team so far, and something's got to change. But I'm going to keep moving along here. I'm going to go Eastern Conference on one of my cold players. Yes, he was a former Laker and won a championship. Now he's trying to help out a team that possibly has a shot at least making that playoff tournament round. Rajon Rondo. He's averaging less than 4 points a game this season. I get he's been playing a lot less minutes. He only has been averaging 15 minutes a game, but he's not the same Rondo I've seen. I don't think he's the Rondo that a lot of people have witnessed. I think a lot of minutes do go to the Trae Young, which affects him, and I think Rondo's been kind of more of a mentor to him. But I think Rondo's going to come out when it's playoff Rondo, but regular season Rondo has not been looking good this year whatsoever and needs to pick it up just a little bit. And then I'm going to go, gosh, I hope I say this right. Josh Okaoji, from the Minnesota Timberwolves. I am sorry if I get that wrong. We can fix that later.
I don't know what the right pronunciation is.
Good. Okay. Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one that does not know, but he has really downgraded this season. He's played in 29 games, started 20. I know I thought maybe since D'Lo's been out this year, I thought he would maybe be the guy who's more of a defensive guy, but 3-point percentage has been below 25%. It's 21, and he's been above 25 the last 2 seasons. Field goal percentage is 35%, has not been solid, averaging less than 5 points a game and only averaging almost just 1 assist a game. And then steals wise, he's below 1 currently. In the last 2 seasons, he was above 1. So he's more of a defensive guy, but he hasn't been showing his defensive presence. I know he's young. He's only 22. So the sky's high for this man, but I hope he gets better because for the Minnesota Timberwolves, they can use anything they can right now. But hey, I'm cool if they tank. I mean, with the Golden State Warriors, it helps them out. So whatever helps out the Golden State Warriors, I'm happy for.
Didn't think about that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Warriors, God forbid they pick anywhere below the top 3 like they have, the last year or two. Before we go, Phoenix head coach Monty Williams, I will make a Nick Rice guarantee will be the coach of the year in the NBA. What he was able to pull off with the Suns is just incredible. Steven, could you second that?
Yeah, I could. I mean,
Doc Rivers is in the discussion with Philly.
Yeah, but I mean, you already have like a really good team in Philly, so it's kind of expected. For us to expect that the Suns would be, the number 2 seed at the halfway point of the season, or like halfway point at the All-Star game weekend, I don't think anyone would have thought of that. I mean, you would have thought that Lakers and Clippers would be 1-2, but it's Jazz and Suns. So I definitely think also the Jazz head coach,
what's his
Snyder,
Quinn Snyder.
Quinn Snyder. He's definitely in the conversation, but I think Monty Williams can win it. I'll second that.
I don't know if I can second that with you, the host. I think I have to go with Quinn Snyder. I think Quinn Snyder has done so well with the Utah Jazz. I think they got the 6th man of the year locked with Jordan Clarkson. I think one thing I do want to talk about Jordan Clarkson, I want to talk about all the Lakers that have just either been traded away, have gone away in free agency.
Don't do this, man.
Yes, I have to. I'm going to mention it right now. It was
all right. Fine.
I got to go. Julius Randle becoming an all-star at the New York Knicks. We talk about Brandon Ingram. He's been one of the best players for the Pelicans. Jordan Clarkson, 6th man of the year. He went to an NBA Finals with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean, come on, man.
Josh Hart for New Orleans. Oh man, did you already bring up Brandon Ingram, Lonzo for New Orleans?
Josh Hart.
Okay. Yeah, Josh Hart. Yeah, right, but Lonzo, I don't think Lonzo has been that good. I'm just saying.
All right.
And D'Angelo Russell. If we talk about D'Angelo Russell, but he's injured this year, but he was an all-star for the Brooklyn Nets.
Right, you jerk.
I mean, you made me pretty low when I lost the all-time 5, so I am gonna bring this up.
Fair. I cannot counter that. All right. Well, next week we promise to bring you our mid-season MVP awards. We'll save that for next time, and maybe offensive, defensive player of the year, or whatever other awards there are. We'll spice it up. How about that? Episode 8's coming up next weekend. Final thoughts, folks, before we sign off.
4-2.
Yeah,
I'm happy to say 4-2, and I'll be coming back ready to go. But I think All-Star game I think just having the All-Star game is going to be really really nice. Something different to watch. It's going to be interesting to see how the NBA kind of figures that out, because instead of an entire weekend spreading out the course of the rookie sophomore game, All-Star Saturday with the 3-point contest, the skills challenge, and all that, and then the All-Star game, you kind of fitting everything into one day on that Sunday. It's going to be interesting to see. So that'll be the thing I'll be looking forward to come Sunday.
I'm actually excited for the All-Star Game draft with LeBron James and Kevin Durant, even though Kevin Durant will not be playing in that game. I'm very excited to see what happens with that.
I think the All-Star game should be 3-on-3, not 5-on-5, just my opinion. That'd spice it up a little bit more. Anyways, that was Stephen Hughes and Robert Deiters. We're back next week, same time, same place. West Coast Heat Check, episode 7 in the books. For another edition of the NBA, tune in right here next Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you next week. Good night.